Good evening, I'm Ginger Casey. California prisoners are charging that their rights are being violated. Like many other controversies we've covered, this one too has to do with AIDS. State prison officials are doing what no outside agency has been able to do. They are quarantining inmates who test HIV positive. They say this is the best way to keep AIDS from running rampant behind bars. But some public health officials claim that this approach may actually foster the spread of the disease. Peter Grauman has our report.
Well, my parole date is 2010. I'm not going to live to see it. So all I can do is go day by day.
They're taking the easy way out. Just lock them down. You know, they're not real people. They're going to die. We don't have to teach them anything. We don't have to give them anything extra.
The AIDS unit at the California Institute for Men at Vacaville. Every one of the 150 inmates here has tested positive for the HIV virus. That doesn't mean they have AIDS. Most have shown no signs of the disease yet. But fearing that these men will spread the infection to the rest of the prison population, the State Corrections Department has imposed a quarantine, creating a prison within a prison.
I had a biopsy done in '85 for a swollen lymph node. And they told me it could have been AIDS-related, and I had been using drugs on the street, so out of concern for my own health, I went ahead and tested. But when I tested, they never did tell me that as a result of a positive test, that I would end up in here.
That you were going to be locked up in the AIDS unit?
They never said that, no.
They are infectious. They are infectious. That's no secret about it. They are HIV infected, which are infectious. And if they share drugs with the people, they share tattoos with people, they will be infecting others.
The state's decision to quarantine inmates runs directly counter to the way that free society is fighting the AIDS epidemic. California voters have twice rejected ballot propositions backed by Lyndon LaRouche to authorize the quarantine of people with AIDS. And most public health officials, from the Surgeon General on down, advocate public education as the primary weapon against the spread of the disease. But state prison officials argue that criminals cannot be relied upon to heed warnings against unsafe sexual practices or sharing needles.
We are talking about inmates who have proven through their criminal activity they have poor judgment. They know if you use a gun, you go to prison, they still use the gun. What stops them of not infecting others, knowing that AIDS is transmitted through different ways, and they still can do it?
The state says that isolating HIV-positive inmates allows the prison to concentrate its medical staff and provide better treatment. The practice also serves to protect infected inmates from other prisoners. But many of the inmates confined to the Vacaville AIDS wing say that isolation denies them access to the few freedoms available behind bars.
If you were doing 5 years, would you want to spend it right here in this corridor? No job, no school, no an hour of gym a night, that's it. That's your life, you know, TV set. It's a trap.
We're just in storage down here. That's all it comes down to. We're in storage, you know. We're last for everything. We don't get the equal treatment they get out there. We can't learn a trade. We can't go to school. We can't participate in the programs, you know, like when I was using drugs out there. Well, if I was able to go to Narcotics Anonymous in here, that would help me. I would benefit from it. Or you got guys who want to go to AA, that would benefit from that, and they can't do that.
Several Vacaville inmates have filed a lawsuit against the state, contending that the restrictive conditions in the AIDS wing are inhumane and undermine their efforts to remain healthy. State officials answered that they're working to provide inmates in the AIDS ward with separate but equal facilities. For example, quarantined prisoners have their own exercise yard and a small law library in the unit's day room.
And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
About the only place where inmates from the AIDS unit are permitted to mix with prisoners from the main line is in church. From his experience in attending weekly Bible study classes, Jimmy Camarillo is convinced that he is in no danger from other inmates.
And I would feel better. I would feel like I'm doing something if I were out there on the main line. If I was pushing a broom in the hallway, I would feel better. You know, I would feel like I'm a part of something instead of being in here subject to this. And it really, the psychological effect is really bad. For me, it is. For a lot of the guys, it is.
Aside from the quarantine issue, most prisoners agree that the medical treatment they receive has improved greatly in recent years. Richard Carbone is serving a 51-year sentence for armed robbery, rape, and burglary. He has survived 3 bouts with pneumocystis pneumonia, one of the opportunistic diseases that often proves fatal for people with advanced AIDS.
Speaking for myself, the medical care here is good. You know, they treat me right. They take care of me. When I was sick and I was up here, I cooperated with the staff, and they in turn made sure that I was taken care of. And
they're not afraid of you?
No. There was a time when they was, but that's all changed now because of the education program and everything.
I brought you my condom chart. Okay? Isn't that cute?
The average stay in the San Francisco County Jail is measured in days instead of years. While behind bars, all San Francisco prisoners are encouraged to learn what they can about AIDS through weekly classes.
What are your risks when you're talking about AIDS? You're talking about you don't want to transfer bodily fluids. What are the bodily fluids we're talking about? Blood and sperm. Sperm, I mean semen. Come. Everybody got that?
Yes. Okay, I have a friend that's in the Tenalon now, and he's dying. And we used to do the crystal. And I was shooting prank at the time. And we used the needle. But this is like way before he even found out he had AIDS.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's no need to be embarrassed about your behavior. And let me stress this, okay? A lot of times we do things that we might not want anybody else to do, to know that we do. But there's really no need to be ashamed of the fact that you have shared a needle with somebody or that you have had sex with somebody without a condom. These are very common things. We just found out about AIDS. Had you known this 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have been doing it. That's why we start at this point right now, so that you can change your behavior, so that in the future you won't make these same mistakes. But
how much effect do you think you really have in talking to these women?
I think I have a lot of effect. From the women I see on the street, I also do street outreach with several community organizations. So I see my jail population in the street as well. Okay, women have come up to me on buses to say, "Look, Sean, look at my purse. Here are condoms." This would not have been the case 6 or 8 months ago.
You know, like you say, scared straight, that's just how I feel now. You know, I don't want to even use any drugs anymore. I don't want to, you know, and which would alleviate some of the crime because I won't have to have the drugs, you know.
We're trying to use as many different varieties of AIDS education that we can because we see education as the key to stopping the spread of AIDS, but also to being able to maintain our own work environment and not let panic and hysteria overtake our professional duties.
Why doesn't San Francisco isolate prisoners you know to be HIV positive?
Our medical experts in San Francisco, which arguably are the most expert people in this field in the world, our medical experts tell us it's not necessary, and we as a jail system do not find that it's necessary in terms of providing safety and security for the people in our custody or for our staff.
In fact, one San Francisco AIDS expert says that quarantining inmates the way the state does is ineffective and possibly dangerous.
Quarantine, as the state of California is doing it, does not provide any sort of absolute protection from AIDS. For one, the state of California is not testing everybody that walks in the door, so that they're missing loads of people who may, in fact, carry the virus, and they're not putting those in quarantine.
So in one sense, quarantining could actually promote the spread of the virus by giving people a false security. Is that true?
I guess that's what I'm suggesting on some situations.
San Francisco officials concede that education won't eliminate the spread of AIDS between inmates. The sheriff would also like to distribute condoms in the jail, as is already being done to prisoners who are being released.
Okay, this is a package, a condom for the AIDS prevention. If you want to use it, you also.
We're scared. We're really scared about the AIDS virus. We handle a lot of scenes that have blood, body fluids. We handle fights. We handle a lot of situations where there's body fluids exposed and that we will come in contact with.
To answer the fears of jail guards, like Sacramento Deputy Sheriff Jack Price, state law was recently changed to permit the forced testing of prisoners who may have exposed a guard to AIDS. Deputy Price was bitten by an inmate a year ago, before the law was changed.
I asked the inmate, when I asked him, I just flat out asked him, are you HIV positive or do you have AIDS? And he started laughing at me and just told me, I guess you're just going to have to wait and find out.
So far, tests of the deputy's blood have shown no sign of AIDS. In fact, there has never been a documented case of an inmate giving AIDS to a guard or another inmate. Nevertheless, the state prison medical director is backing legislation authorizing the universal testing of all inmates entering the prison system.
We have a responsibility for staff protection. We have a responsibility for inmate treatment of the inmates who are infected. And we have the responsibility of stopping the spread of the disease any way we can. And the best way to do it is through mandatory testing, yes.
Does your mouth hurt? You got thrush. You got a lot of thrush, you know.
For those inmates who have AIDS, the policy issues, like testing and quarantine, take second place to the life and death struggle for survival.
It's really hard to talk to inmates about this, particularly with inmates like Mazik, who's really been a really model inmate while he's been here. And I find it real difficult to tell them directly that I don't think they're going to parole out of here.
I'm just trying to live day by day, because I know I'm going to be here for a while, and I'm just trying to live day by day and make the best of a bad situation.
How long is your sentence?
Oh, I'll be here about at least 5 more years.
What for? What you do?
Armed robbery. Several.
That's what I'm hoping for. If I could last just long enough until they bring a cure out, then I'll beat it. But if they don't, then I've already said to myself, I won't be afraid, to die or whatever when the time comes. But I'm going to try to fight as hard as possible in the meantime to stay alive.
With no cure in sight, AIDS will continue to be a problem behind bars. A recent study showed that nearly 3% of incoming prisoners have been exposed to the virus. The Department of Corrections says that unless the courts tell it to stop its current practice, it's ready to quarantine as many as 5,000 inmates, 20 times the current number.
A few weeks ago, we reported on Squaw Valley.
Seems